Well, I want to talk now about Labor's super tax on unrealised gains. Now, this is nothing more than a dangerous cash grab on superannuation accounts over $3 million. It's unindexed, meaning more and more people will fall through the trap, and now more and more economists are warning against it. Joining me is Dimitri Burshtein from Eminence Advisory. Dimitri, thank you so much for joining me. Look, I think that these taxes are very sneaky. Break it down for us and explain what exactly it all means.
Sneaky, not so much. Destructive, very much so. It has the smell of a yes minister idea to it, with the Treasury designing a tax that is at once both morally repugnant, administratively complex and economically destructive, and then inviting the minister to make a courageous decision. The reality, however, is that the tax is unlikely to generate the revenue projected because people will adapt to minimise the impact on them. In the meantime, it'll be a business development bonanza for the accountants, lawyers, valuers and financial planners who advise people how to minimise their tax. As Kerry Packer said some 35 years ago, if anyone in this country is not minimising their tax, they want their heads read. The most offensive part of this tax is that it'll be calculated, as you've noted, on both realised and unrealised income. That is paper profits, which may be fleeting, and when the superannuant may not necessarily have the cash to meet their liability.
Well, that's a really good point. And I just think it's like socialism by stealth, really. And given it's not indexed, how big of an impact will that have?
Oh, it's pretty big, but it's part of the, expanding socialist tapestry covering more and more of the Australian economy. It'll just add to the government's tax take, albeit not as much as originally envisaged, to enable an ever-growing government to spend ever more. The non-indexation is just but one of the horrible elements of the design of this tax, and it will have just introduced bracket creep into superannuation. Most people, as recently as the last election, spoke of the bad economic effects of bracket creep on income tax. This will just now do the same thing to superannuation. And, Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer, recently has acknowledged this and said it will just provide the governments of the day with a political opportunity to, offer tax cuts in the future, thus asking Australians to thank the government for giving them back what was unjustly taken in the first place.
Yeah, it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, really. Is it just a new means of taxing, do you think, even in other areas before it's even realised?
Look, it's not the only tax on unrealised gains. For example, land taxes and council rates work on the same mechanism. They do a valuation of your land once every couple of years. But it's, again, the problem is it's based on a subjective assessment of valuers. And if you want to clog up the courts, just wait until people start disputing their assessments. But the amounts involved in land tax and council rates are much, much smaller than what we're talking about here. And they're not charged on the own home. So the number of people who are going to be captured is much higher, is low, but it's on a much thinner base. But this is for the reason why I and many others strongly oppose the idea of swapping stamp duty for land tax, because it'll just be like the superannuation tax on steroids.
Oh, it's an absolute shambles. And the other thing is I don't think it's going to get through the Senate without the Greens. But even then, the Greens could add all sorts of demands onto it. We know that they love a tax.
That's true. And I will note that the Greens, before the election, said they want the threshold to be $2 million rather than $3 million. But we are talking about the Greens, and you never know what they're going to come up with. They could ask, for example, for free vegan school lunches, or to put Maureen Faruqi's face on the $10 note. You just never know with the Greens.
Well, that would be an absolute disaster, just like these taxes. You're absolutely spot on. You just don't know with these Greens. Dimitri Burshtein, nice to catch up. Thank you very much for joining me on the show this evening. Really appreciate it.